that she and her team have done these conferences. Can you imagine 10 times over? So you're talking about a work that has impacted thousands of aspiring lawyers who have impacted thousands of people. My grandmother used to talk about a little bit of change, but I want transformational change. You know, I want something great, and imagine the work that you and others are doing is bringing about transformational change. And we thank you for what you're doing. And as you hear from Monica and Lori and Kent, each of them is doing work that's going to result in transformational change. Welcome to the second day of this special conference and fair. I'm thankful and, to be honest with you, honored to be one of your keynote speakers. But I came here to issue a challenge. And the challenge I want to issue today is to be uncommon. To be uncommon and to strive to make a difference. Now, I'd like to start by telling you a story. And then I will end with telling you a story. So once I get to that second story, you'll know. Thank goodness he's not. My story starts over 60 years ago, and it's a story of a young couple, and they are driving south to Mississippi to start a new life. A baby is bouncing in a basket on the floor of their automobile. Already, his parents are planning his future. Surprise, surprise. I was that baby. My view of the law, my view of civil rights, has been shaped by my origins in the Magnolia State. But my opportunities, however, were provided by my parents and a few bold attorneys who dared to make a difference. People I did not know. You see, long before Barack Obama inspired a nation, long before Selma, Alabama, and the Edmund Pettus Bridge entered our consciousness, long before Ole Miss rebelled, long before Little Rock complied, long before Emmett Till whistled, long before Martin Luther King Jr. resurrected the American dream, when freedom in America all too often remained hidden in a galaxy darker than 1,000 midnight, there were attorneys who chose to make a difference. They were men and women who saw America not as it was, but as it could, should, and I dare say must be. You know, the contributions of Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, they're well documented. For that reason, I feel impelled, as Thomas Jefferson would say, to take a few minutes to recall several African American attorneys who defied convention on behalf of a forgotten people. That good-looking young man tells me all I have to do is press. Let's see what happens. This gentleman, seen as a young man at 24, is Fred Gray. Anybody here from Alabama? No, okay, well, I'm going to eventually get some part of the country. And Fred Gray's client listing reads like a who's who of the civil rights movement. He represented, among others, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., E.D. Nixon. His cases included Vermillion versus Lightfoot, Pollard versus the United States. That was a Tuskegee syphilis study. He also represented a young woman, Vivian Malone Jones. She was the first African-American student to graduate from the University of Alabama. Her brother-in-law, Eric Holder, is the Attorney General of the United States. This is A.P. Turow. Mr. Turow graduated from Howard Law School in 1925. Up until from 1937 to like 1950, he was the only African-American attorney in the whole state. Among his landmark cases is the lawsuit which resulted in the integration of the New Orleans public schools. It's been memorialized in a famous Norman Rockwell painting, The Problem We All Live With. I think you all are familiar with this painting, yes? I'm supposed to say yes, of course. Yeah. You know it well, a little black girl in a pristine white dress, ruler and books in hand. A racial epitaph scrawled on the wall and an errant tomato on the ground. A little girl escorted by 4 headless U.S. Marshals, 2, 4, 6-8, we don't want to integrate. This chant had its origin in the case brought by AP Tudor. Finally, there's my friend Wally Brandt, Sr. He's a grad. Anybody from Arkansas? All right, I finally got it. Where are you from in Arkansas? Little Rock. Little Rock. All right, man. Well, Wiley graduated from Arkansas A&M. They call it Arkansas Pine Bluff today. He was among the first black applicants to the University of Arkansas. He also persuaded a friend, Silas Hunt, to apply as the first black student to the University of Arkansas Law School. And he was the first black student to attend a predominantly white university in the South since Reconstruction. But somewhere, I think I've got some young people out here in the audience. Do I?
Yes.
Yes. Amen. All right now, Miss West. Come on now. Come on. But somewhere, the young people in this audience are saying to me, Mr. Wilson, that was yesterday's history. You're boring me to death. What are the challenges we face today? I'm glad you asked that question. Where are you from? New York. New York City. Okay. Well, let's, anybody here from Illinois? Anybody from Chicago? Well, let's talk about Chicago for a minute. That's where the president came from. He says, today, black children in Chicago are being murdered at an alarming rate. Of the 500 murder victims in Chicago in 2013, if that's recent enough for you, 350 were African American. 318 were men, 32 were women. Far too many are children. African American and Hispanic young men are more than 6 times as likely to be victims of murder than their white peers. And they account for almost half of this country's murder victims each year. According to the Schott Foundation for Public Education, which has tracked graduation rates of black males from public high schools since 2004, over 61% of the black boys who start the 9th grade did not graduate from high school in the 2009-2010 school year, the most recent year for which this information is available. And according to the White House, which is over there, right, by the time they hit 4th grade, 86% of African American boys and 82% of Hispanic boys are reading below proficiency levels. That's 8.5 out of 10. And according to Columbia University's National Center for Children in Poverty, 45% of the people who spent at least half of their childhood in poverty were still poor at 35. And among those who spent less than half their childhood in poverty, just 8% were poor at 35. So you see, we have work to do, don't we? Amen. Now some of you are probably thinking that you have to be a certain age to make a difference. But I submit to you that there's some things for which there is not a minimum age requirement. In fact, a number of people have proven to be uncommon at a very early age. Does anyone know who this is? Student? Yes, ma'am. Thurgood Marshall. At age 27, right? Age 27, Thurgood Marshall defended and won alongside his mentor, Charles Hamilton Houston, his case Murray versus Pearson. Donald Murray wanted to attend the University of Maryland Law School. He was not allowed to. 27, Thurgood Marshall brings and wins this case. Anybody recognize this student? Student. Jackie Robinson, 42, right? At age 28, Jackie Robinson played his first game at Evans Field for the Brooklyn Dodgers, becoming the first black player to play in the major leagues. Student, let's see, let me pick a student. This young lady right there. You recognize this man? Get a little louder. Yes, that's Martin Luther King. Anyone know how old he was at the time of the Montgomery bus boycott?
31.
Student? Any students know? He was born in 1929. The bus boycott was 1955-56. He was at 26. That's it, 26, 27 years old. Anybody recognize this young woman in the middle? Student? Wilma Rudolph. hometown, Clarksdale, Tennessee. Anybody know Clarksdale? Well, I know Clarksdale. And Wilma, as we know, had polio. She wore braces her entire life. In 1956, at age 16, Skeeter, she professionally won a bronze medal in the relay. In 1960, at the Rome Games, she won 3 gold medals. And the perfection of Cassius Clay and every other medal at the Olympic Games. 16. So you don't have to be a certain age, do you? Well, let's keep proving this. I have a student on this side. Anybody recognize who this woman is, this young man? Do you know who she is? How about this young lady right here? Yes, ma'am. Okay, how about you? Say it with a little pride, a little volume. Yes, ma'am. That's Constance Baker Mountain. At age 29. Nobody's 30 yet, right? She helped draft a complaint in 1950 for the Brown versus Board of Education case. Age 29. Wow. Anybody recognize the man on the right? Why, that's Fred Gray. Anybody recognize the man on the left? Okay, anybody? That's Martin Luther King Jr. And there's Fred Gray, one of his favorite clients. 24, he took on the cases of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, who were both charged with disorderly conduct for refusing to give up their seats on a bus of white passengers. So understand, it wasn't just Rosa Parks. There's another one there, lost to history. Students, anybody recognize the man on the left? Students. That's John Lewis. What are those specks on his jacket? Blood. Who's the young man on the right? Another student. Right? Anybody heard of Anniston, Alabama? Yes. Oh, she should sound. See, she knows about the bridge. Well, in Anniston, that's where they turned the bus over and burned it down. The freedom riders were there. He was 21. John Lewis was, as a freedom rider. At 23, at age 23, 51 years ago this June, he spoke at the March on Washington. Anybody recognize this woman? Student. That's Sonia Sotomayor. I'm glad y'all got that one. At age 26, this Supreme Court justice served as an assistant DA in Manhattan. She was responsible for prosecuting robberies, assaults, murders, police brutality, and child pornography cases. Age 26. Students, I want a young man to answer this. No, I want a young woman to answer this question. Who's that guy? Russell Wilson. Thank you. Quarterback up. And they won the Super Bowl up. He's also my nephew. So that's my favorite one. So, and he defeated the other quarterback in the game, was 37. Right? The greatest quarterback in the history of professional football, Peyton Manning. This is the little guy, too short to play. I guess it didn't work out. There are 2 messages here as I close. You should be smiling now. The first message is you do not have to wait or to be a certain age to be uncommon. I think that's pretty clear. Second, it should be clear beyond a reasonable doubt that those of us in this room have work to do in our community, correct? And for you see, my story starts now. Somewhere in America, a couple is driving to start a new life. A baby girl is bouncing in her car seat. Already, her parents are planning for her future. Let us resolve today, right here, right now, that we will help ensure her future by being uncommon. Rather than merely being a statistic, let's make a difference let's do it now.